Dueling Quills Media presents the Ridgeton Tales, written by Ian Oliver and D.M. Sanders, with contributions by Ciaran Michael Sullivan.
Chapter 17. Father and Son. Keldos. Half-elf cleric. The air grew colder as Keldos descended the winding steps. Thankfully, his eyes adjusted quickly in large part to his dark sight. Not that there was much to see. Footsteps echoed through the tight corridor, reverberating all around. Telerik grumbled behind Keldos, muttering about the din. There was no sneaking in this place. It wasn't much longer until the coiling stairs straightened into a final passageway. Firelight flickered at the base of the stony steps. Torches framed a large door, which was slightly ajar. Gnawing returned to Keldos's gut at the sight of the door. It felt eerie. Something about it wasn't right, but he couldn't place his finger on it. "Strange, isn't it?" asked Telerik. He'd crept forward just a few steps from the doorway. "I don't see any sort of traps."
I don't sense the arcane at play either.
A blue glow faded as Magnus's hand flourishes ceased.
Though what lies behind the door is out of my reach.
Keldos found himself rooted in place. He stood on the final step, clutching his Cioshan pendant. He watched silently as Telerik disappeared into the room beyond. Magnar followed soon after. After a few moments, he was left alone. "Siak, I need you now more than ever." One deep breath later, and Keldos pushed open the creaking door. His mouth fell open. 4 massive murals hung on the far wall. The room widened, and a tall double door sat in the middle of the second and third murals. Keldos jogged over to the leftmost of the 4. A smile grew on his face. Humans and elves mingled in harmony, dancing, singing, and laughing. Tools lay scattered across the fields, while groups gathered at tables reading scrolls and books. Buildings stood half built off in the distance. A radiant sunburst dominated the sky above. As peaceful as the mural seemed to be, a shadowy figure peeked out from behind a tree, eyes red with malice. "The Age of Reason," breathed Keldos. He reached out, touching the canvas. Dust came away on his fingertips. "What was that, laddie?" Magnar asked. He stood near the center of the room, leaning on his warhammer. "These murals are teachings of Siak. This one here," Keldos gestured at the artwork, "is known as the Age of Reason. It was a time of peace and prosperity in the world." Moving down the line, Keldos explained each one. "The next one here is the Fall and Endless Night. You can see the gods above have retreated, indicated by the darkening sun and sky. The devious creature from the previous painting towers above the mortals below. Their eyes closed to the truth, but even in the blackest night, many kept their faith." Keldos paused, admiring the few sorrowful mortals, caught in the darkness of blues and blacks, raising their hands to the gods above. He shuddered at the sight of fiendish beings stalking them in the night. Shaking his head, he moved on to the third mural. The Gift of the Moons. The others trailed behind him, taking in the art pieces. Darkness could not hold sway for eternity. Raising the moons high into the sky, the gods cut through the night. Shapes of light, their wings resplendent, dotted the night sky, watching over the mortals. You can see how the shadowy fiends now cower from the vigilant gods on high. Keldos stopped in front of the final mural. An angelic being hovered in the center, silver skin glistening in the radiant light from above. A mighty staff bearing the symbol of Siak at its head was in their hands, raised high above them. Incantus, and the staff of Siak, an ascended being who carried Siak's power, banishing the fiends of Balnaraz preying on the mortals. Telerik squinted at the painting from far off. "I've never heard of this history."
That's because it never happened,
Magnus said. He was a few feet in front of the mural, craning his neck upward. "Magnus is correct," said Keldos. There are no recorded events that match these murals. It's merely a teaching within the Ciaran temples, one that shows we must never lose hope or faith. There will always be a dawn, even when the night seems darkest. Magnar laughed. Seems like a lot of trouble just to get that point across. Keldos caringly patted the stout barbarian's armored shoulder. My friend, that was but a very brief and poor summation of the mythos. I will gladly give it the justice it deserves. Once we find my father safe and sound. Opening the ancient oaken door, Keldos and the others entered a musty corridor. Narrow enough for two people to walk side by side, the hall was shrouded in complete darkness, and water seeped in through cracks in the stone walls. Magnar grumbled, as he usually did, his hammer smacking against the walls. It seemed to hit the walls harder after Magnus told him to be quiet. Telerik moved like a ghost, and Val was at the rear of the pack, twiddling with her long silver hair. Keldos reached the end of the corridor. Silvery light streaked downward at an angle from the upper left of the empty room. Dust lingered in the light, unmoving. The air was eerily still. A blinding flash filled Keldos's eyes. Then came the scrape of metal against stone, followed by a pained yell. When the bright light subsided, Keldos found Beltayne lying on the floor against the wall by the doorway. The snow elf was rubbing his elbow and looking toward the opposite end of the room, bewildered.
What in the hells was that?
Magnus asked. Magnar pulled Beltayne to his feet. The paladin cautiously walked forward again, slowly reaching his hand out. Just as the elf's hand entered the first beam of light, another bright flash blinded Keldos. Beltayne, once again, was on the ground groaning.
Very interesting,
muttered Magnus, stroking his beard. He stood inches from the light, examining the beam. After a few minutes, the wizard noted that magic was not the cause of the mysterious barrier. Telerik drew his bow and launched an arrow toward the opposite end of the room. Keldos shielded his eyes, but no bright light ever came. The clanking of the arrow crashing into the wall was all he heard.
Very, very interesting,
mused Magnus again. He began pacing and muttering under his breath. What could this mean? Thinking back to all his religious studies, Keldos tried finding any sort of explanation for the barrier before them. No magic created it. Magnus even said so. And his detection abilities are second to none. Divine intervention, perhaps? If it was intervention from Ciaran, it was strange that it was happening here, in this abandoned temple. Keldos stepped up to the light. Clutching his pendant, he closed his eyes and thought of his father. He felt something tugging at his core. Faint whispers filled his ears, calling out to him. His eyes shot open, darting around the room. The others were by the door talking amongst themselves. It couldn't have been them. He turned back to the beam and said a prayer. Slowly, he reached his hand into the silver light. He heard cries behind him, the others yelling for him to stop. It was too late. Keldos's hand hovered in the divine beam of light. No flash of light, no shockwave.
How?
Asked Magnus.
How did you do that?
A smile grew on Keldos's face. I think Ciaran has permitted me to pass. That's all well and good, Magnar added. But how do we get through? A rush of air blew through the room from the opposite end. The stillness swept away in seconds. In a flash, the streaks of light flattened, stretching parallel to the ground above their heads. Well, I'll be a goblin's ass, muttered Magnar. He laughed and smacked Keldos on the back. Good one, laddie. Keldos trudged toward the others, who jogged to the stone door at the far end of the room. He tried to move faster, but his legs felt heavy. Something cold crept into his chest. His heartbeat quickened with each labored step. Hurry up, Kel, Beltayne called. He was waving Winter's Bite vigorously. Thankfully, Keldos managed to pick up the pace. After telling them he was okay, they showed him the door. It was plain. There was no writing or adornments, but as he stepped up closely to the white stone, a small hole appeared. Running his hand over it, he realized it matched the one on the pillar above. Quickly, he placed his Ciaran pendant into the hole and unlocked the door. Stone grated against stone as it opened inward. The chamber beyond was round. A single beam of light streamed in from above, shining straight down to a dais in the center of the room. 6 marble pillars were spaced evenly around the edge. A few steps into the room and Keldos stopped dead. His eyes widened at what he saw. 6 figures lay on the ground surrounding the center dais. No. Dropping his shield and mace, he sprinted to the nearest downed figure. Falling to his knees, he let out a cry. Tears welled. He struggled to breathe. No! His father's face stared up at him, eyes lifeless and cold. Keldos shook his father's body. Wake up. Get up, father. He kept shaking. With blurred vision, all he could do was bury his face into the armored chest of his dead father. He sobbed helplessly. He felt hands on each shoulder, but he shrugged them off. He wanted to be alone. His father couldn't be dead. The great Casimir was invincible. Or so Keldos thought. What would his mother say? He'd promised her he would find his father and bring him home. He'd been too many steps behind. If only he'd found this place sooner. Then anger swelled. If I hadn't gone wandering off to Praldosta, none of this would have happened. Throwing his head back, Keldos howled before slumping forward. I failed.
Keldos.
He looked up. Magnus was there. A single tear rolled down the dwarf's cheek. He's dead because of me, Magnus.
No, he's dead of his own decisions.
Magnus knelt, placing a hand on Keldos's shoulder.
I cannot imagine what you are feeling right now, but this is not your fault, Kel.
Eyes burning and full of tears, Keldos tried to smile at his friend. He was a good friend. But no words of comfort would assuage this pain. Greater than any physical wound, finding his father dead was a knife to the heart, twisting and turning. A golden Ciaran pendant hung around his father's neck. Removing it, Keldos held it up. It was more ornamental than the one he'd been given. It was something that had to be earned. I have not yet earned this, but I will not leave it to be lost to the ages. He slipped off his own pendant and replaced it with his father's. Holding it in his hand, he said a prayer. Siak, help me guide my fathers. He faltered at the word. Shuddering, he took a great breath and continued. I will bear my father's pendant and return it home. It belongs with Mother. A radiance glimmered from the pendant as it flared to life with golden light. Siak approves, he said. He kissed the pendant and let it hang. He allows me to wear the pendant. Rising to his feet, he turned and found Beltayne holding a mace. It was Casimir's. The handle was wrapped with a brown grip, a rounded pommel of silver and gold, a thick steel shaft, and a head with grandiose golden flanges made it an impressive sight. Beltayne held the weapon out, offering it to him. Stepping up to the snow elf, Keldos gripped the mace. "'Tis a formidable weapon, small ears. Take up your father's mace. Make him proud." A genuine smile spread across Keldos's face. "That's quite possibly the most ardent thing you've ever said to me, Bel." The snow elf nodded and backed away, turning his attention to the center of the room. Keldos replaced his weapon with his father's. It tugged at his belt when he slid it into the ringlet. It was heavier than his old mace. He turned and knelt beside his father. "I'm going to need to work on my melee prowess. I'll make you proud." This sarcophagus is still shut. Telerik stood next to the large stone tomb. Should we open it? Everything within Keldos said no, but his curiosity gnawed at him. My father and the paladins all died here, around this tomb. I think it might be a very, very poor idea. They were here for a reason, no? Magnar asked. His voice carried like a boulder rolling down a hillside. You said they were looking for a relic of your god, right? Let's open the damn thing.
I don't know, brother,
Magnus interjected.
Something killed these warriors, 5 paladins and Keldos's father, and not a single one of them bears any semblance of a wound.
That troubled Keldos. What could have killed them? Magic, divine intervention, something more nefarious? We shouldn't open it, but I feel we have to. Keldos and the others stood at the top step of the dais, staring at the sarcophagus. Magnar is correct. I cannot leave any stone unturned. I must continue my father's quest. I will find the Ciaran relic and return it to its rightful place. Ha! Good on you, laddie. Magnar placed the head of his maul against the stone lid and shoved with a booming roar. An uncomfortable scraping chewed at Keldos's ears as the lid slid off the tomb, crashing down the steps on the other side. Leaning over the now open tomb, Keldos found a single item within. A thin veil. It bore Ciac's symbol, a golden S embroidered into the fabric. Silver weaves intertwined along the edges. He carefully grabbed it and lifted it from the tomb. As he did so, the veil disintegrated before his very eyes. What in the... Telerik muttered. Scratching sounded from behind the group. Keldos spun around. A figure clad in all black stood beside a pillar, its pallid hand clawing at the stone. A long, gnarled staff in his grasp, planted into the ground, holding his weight. The relic is gone, priest. It was more of a hiss than a voice. Ethereal. Dangerous. Who are you, villain? Beltayne shouted. The tip of Winter's bite pointed directly at the unknown creature. A low grumble came from the being as it tapped its staff 3 times against the floor. Green wisps, deep and vile, slithered from the staff, winding through the air. Your search is folly. This is your end. In the blink of an eye, the being was gone. A puff of black smoke drifted away from where they had just been. The wisps buried themselves into the corpses encircling the tomb. By the Queen of Falling Snow! Vile magic. Unholy! Beltayne charged toward the nearest corpse as it began to rise from death. Low, broken groans filled the empty room. Heart sinking, Keldos turned and found his father down on one knee, staring at him. Glowing green eyes knifed into Keldos. His body refused to move. The others leaped into action, Magnar roaring with rage as he bounded over the tomb. Beltayne flourished Winter's bite with elegance. Magnus incanted, throwing balls of fire at his foes. Val was darting about in panther form, slicing at the legs of the risen undead. Telerik launched arrow after arrow, each striking true. With wide eyes, Keldos turned back to his father. The corpse ambled at him, moaning, arms outstretched. The undead were sluggish, but it didn't matter. Backing away, Keldos stumbled over something and fell to the ground. These bastards won't stay dead, Magnar shouted. Rolling to a knee, Keldos watched as each undead took fatal blows, yet they groaned and rose back to their feet. They were mindless, mere husks of their former paladin glory, including Keldos's father. He found the familiar face, pain etched into it. The dead man picked up his pace. Green mist swirled around him, forming into a blackened longsword. Undead Casimir raised the ebony blade high above his head, moving with a deadly quickness. What's happened? Yelled Telerik. They're getting faster. Raising his shield in the nick of time, Keldos deflected his father's blade. Staunching blow after blow, Keldos still hadn't drawn his mace. He couldn't. He was locked in a stalemate with the undead being that was once his father. It was trying to kill him. He knew that, but Keldos still couldn't draw his weapon. Instead, he shoved with all his might, knocking his father backward with his shield. The creature moaned when its head slammed into the ground. Wincing, Keldos backed away, heart pounding. His father rose again, and with an ear-splitting screech, charged straight for Keldos. Magnar's maul slammed into Casimir's chest, crushing him to the ground in a heap. It was useless. Casimir rose once more, a smirk on his face. I'm sorry. I love you. Keldos gripped his pendant. Abominations of the dead. Be banished from this realm. Ciac wills it. A brilliant flash of gold burst from Keldos, pulsing 3 times, bathing the room in daylight. The undead screeched and gurgled as the golden light scorched their skin, setting them ablaze. Golden flames smote the creatures, collapsing where they stood. They were finally still. Keldos fell to his knees. His father's body lay before him, charred. Closing his eyes, he took a moment for a silent prayer to Ciac. Magnar and Beltayne helped gather the bodies of the paladins and laid them next to his father. Cleansed by divine fire, the remains were put to final rest. After gathering their things and righting themselves, the group made to leave the dark crypt. With one last glance, Keldos looked at his father and the heralds of Siok. More memories hit him like a tidal wave. The first time he'd seen his father cast a light spell, when he guided Keldos through his first martial training lesson. He failed miserably, but his father did nothing but bolster his confidence. He remembered how deeply his parents loved one another. And that was the true grief, knowing that his mother would be without him. It had always been cruel that death would call his father hundreds of years before her time. Now it would be even sooner. After a few more moments and a few more tears, Keldos was ready. The truth was he wasn't ready at all, but he had to be. He regrouped with the others. Magnus and Beltayne each placed an arm around him as they walked back into the grand temple hall. Keldos heard Val and Telerik speaking about the mysterious figure who raised the dead. It was troubling, but it was the last thing on Keldos's mind. There, Telerik was quickly moving between orc corpses, rustling through their belongings. As the group neared, he popped up, holding a tattered parchment. It's a damn poor map, but it seems to show a line from here to some fort to the south. These slavers are really becoming a pain in the arse, complained Magnar, leading us from one place to the next.
Calm yourself, brother. As long as we keep finding breadcrumbs, we'll keep following.
Yeah. Magnar waved dismissively and started for the exit. And what the hells was the deal with that creep? Summoning the dead to attack us like that.
One thing at a time. We'll deal with that later.
Magnus turned to Keldos. The wizard's face softened. It was weird to see him look that way.
Kel, I am sorry about your father. We all understand if you need to leave and go back to your home.
Leave? No, I cannot leave yet. The relic my father died trying to find is still missing. Keldos forced a lopsided grin. And Siok would not allow me to abandon these slaves to a fate worse than death. Magnus smiled back at him and patted Keldos's chest.
Good man.
Smile fading from his face, Keldos looked over his shoulder one last time. The temple seemed brighter. It was a sign. One chapter had come to a close. Goodbye, Father. I will finish what you began. I promise. Now, finally knowing the fate of his father and the heralds, Keldos steeled his resolve and followed Magnus down the hillside path toward the barren lands in the south. End of chapter.
The Ridgeton Tales is a collaborative web serial written by Ian Oliver and D.M. Sanders, with contributions by Ciaran Michael Sullivan, all rights reserved. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents either are a product of the author's imaginations or used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. For more information about the authors, including blogs, biographical material, and individual works, please visit our website at duelingquills.com. A written transcript of this episode is available for free on our website and at royalroad.com. We'll see you next time.